And minority students bring with them a variety of different challenges. One of those challenges is language. So it's not just that they are non-white students, but these are students who speak multiple languages. And so how do we create a learning environment, one school, that can accommodate the needs of multilingual children? So you'll see our English language learners has increased from 8% in 1980 to 25%. So 25% of the students in the state of California are English language learners, which means English is not their first language. Create some challenges for us. Additionally, as we increase in numbers, we're also increasing in the number of kids who come to school and live in poverty. So we've gone from 35%, 36% of kids in poverty to now to 1 out of every 2 students in California lives in poverty. What are some of the effects of these challenges? We look at our African American, Black, and Latino, Hispanic students, and we look at their reading level, and we do a standardized test, and in 2008, the reading level of our 7th grade Black students and 7th grade Latino students was about the same level as our 3rd grade white students. So not only do we have challenges in terms of language, but it starts to show itself now in achievement. So we have this achievement gap in the state of California. And so now we have our non-white students performing, or I should say 7th graders, performing at the same level as our white 7th grade students. So we see that the educational landscape in California, we're being asked to educate more students. We're asked to educate students who are minority students. We're being asked to educate students whose primary language is not English. And we're being asked to educate more students who are living in poverty. That's our challenge. Now, if we look at Los Angeles Unified, which is the largest district in California, it gives you a sense of what we're dealing with right in our backyard at UCLA. So, the Los Angeles Unified School District serves an area of about 710 miles. Humongous, right? We service almost 700,000 students with 885 schools. So you can imagine the bureaucracy of trying to create a system where every kid can be successful. But that's our challenge. So the challenge is ensuring both excellence, what we call quality schooling, with equity. That every kid have access, and they can participate and can benefit from the schooling process. Now, over the last 15, 20 years, I've engaged in a number of different studies looking at curriculum, looking at school culture. My most current work now is looking at leadership. What is the role of school leaders in bringing about and changing the conditions for high quality schooling? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about a very particular study. And this study is an attempt to identify the unique and complex relationship between social justice leadership and the fight for increased equity and access in urban California schools. So really looking at the role of leadership and bringing about equity and access, right? There's many different facets of the school process. And so we've identified leadership as being a key component. And how does leadership begin to create those conditions? And secondly, to examine the role of leaders in transforming the barriers that preclude students from being successful in the schooling process. So that's the purpose of this particular study I'm going to talk about. So the context for us is this idea of social justice. Michael Fullan in his work talks a lot about having this moral purpose. And the work that we do at UCLA, I'm also the director of our leadership training program. So the folks who train school principals. And we've learned over time that a desire to simply move up in education in terms of a job, or to simply have a desire to be a better educator, is not enough for the difficult job that lies ahead for school leaders. But they really have to have a moral purpose. It has to be bigger than them. Because imagine, at least for us, in a California context, it's not just about educating kids, but it's about transforming communities. Because schools are just a microcosm of the communities in which they are embedded. And so it's about transforming the schooling process to transform communities, right? So if you think about, at least in our context, for example, in Los Angeles, we'll build a high school. And depending on where that high school is located, a student might have to go through 2, 3, 4 different gang-infested areas just to get to school. And so we have to be very particular about how we structure schools, where we locate schools, and the purpose of why we place schools in particular places. So the research context is that we're looking at 10 urban high schools across the state of California. We were looking for 10 schools that had what we called bold and courageous leadership. We were looking for schools where leaders were self-identified as saying that they are interested in addressing equity issues. We were looking for schools that would represent the ethnic, the racial, and language diversity of the state of California. And we were looking for schools that were engaged in activities or programs designed to address social justice issues. It's a little small here, but the methods for the study are qualitative. We conduct a number of different focus group interviews with both students and teachers. We also had individual interviews with principals, as well as individual interviews with other school leaders. Trying to get at, how do we make this connection between strong, bold, and courageous leadership and changing the conditions that are important for student achievement? And this is a cross-case comparison design. And it's it's an attempt to identify these common themes across these 10 schools. I was guided by a couple of research questions here. So it's, what does educational leadership for social justice within an urban high school context look like? What is social justice in an urban high school in the state of California? How do these educational leaders address issues of equity and access? And how does this increased equity and access impact student achievement? And then to what degree do social justice leaders connect their struggle for equity and access to broader political and cultural issues? So these are the questions that we're going in with. Again, with this framework of critical race and these change theories. So here are the emerging findings. So this is probably what's most helpful as we think about the work here in Georgia. First of all, as we think about social justice, one of the things that became real clear to our in our data analysis, there's really no clear definition of social justice across the 10 schools. Each school leader defines social justice actually in accordance to the marginalized population that it attempted to serve. So in schools where there were multiple races of students, social justice was defined oftentimes in terms of race. It was about, we have one school where the racial distribution was still primarily Latino, African American, and Filipino. But the inequities were seen in the ways in which the African American students were treated on the campus and their achievement level.